Welcome to this presentation on leadership and emotional intelligence, and today we're going to be discussing the link between these two. Specifically, we're going to be discussing the hypothesis that there is a strong link between a leader's emotional intelligence and their corresponding effectiveness and success as a leader. This was this topic of study that I chose for our most recent research paper, and I'm excited to share some of the findings of it with you. But before we get too far into it, it's important that we refresh ourselves on what exactly emotional intelligence is. So Griffin, Phillips, and Gulley described that emotional intelligence is an interpersonal capability that includes the ability to perceive and express emotions, to understand and to use them, and also to manage them in ourselves and in those around us. So we're going to be exploring this concept of the link between emotional intelligence and leadership success throughout this discussion, and I'm excited to get into some of these results with you. And there were four main results that we found that were kind of the findings, if you will, from the literature review that we conducted, which was how we went about proving our hypothesis. So the first main finding that we found was that there are several benefits to having emotionally intelligent leaders in organizations. Some of these benefits include things like the ability to more adaptively and really accurately handle stressful situations. Additionally, emotionally intelligent leaders were found to really be able to raise the bar, not only of their personal success in organizations, but also be able to raise up the atmosphere of the people that they were leading as well. Increases in productivity and effectiveness were found not only in the leaders that were emotionally intelligent, but in the people underneath those displaying emotionally intelligent traits. Another benefit was simply that they interacted better with their peers and with the people they were leading to reduced turnover and increased employee contentment and happiness. So obviously these are tremendous benefits that we would desire to have in any leader, and it's interesting that we find them in emotionally intelligent leaders, and in fact this does make sense in a lot of ways. So first off, we found that there were a lot of benefits to having emotionally intelligent leaders, but then our second finding was that emotional intelligence can actually be used as a predictor of success in organizations. So a leader's success can actually be predictive if they have a high emotional intelligence quotient. And that's EQ, and it's a common acronym that we use, much like IQ. It's just EQ is specifically regarding somebody's level of emotional intelligence. So it can be used as a predictor of success, and a couple examples of this were one specific study found that as much as 30% of an individual's success in a leadership role can be specifically attributed to their ability to effectively interact on the emotional plane and be able to exhibit strong emotional intelligence. Another example that we were able to find in the literature is that one study found that emotional intelligence is in fact the closest thing that we have to a predictor of leader success. It is more effective, in fact, as the study found, than something like an individual's intelligence, their IQ, or even other demographic characteristics like their age, gender, education, background, things like that. So obviously we can see that there's a close link between emotional intelligence and a leader's success, and that in fact can be used as a predictor of success. And the vast majority of studies that we looked at confirmed this hypothesis and really supported this theory. In fact, some individuals went to say as much as the fact that emotional intelligence may actually be the predictor of success that has been long sought after by researchers. So obviously that's very powerful. And moving on, though, the third different element that we discovered in this literature review is that emotional intelligence isn't only applicable in the Western context. In fact, it can be used across cultures. And we looked at examples in India and in South Africa, and studies in both of those locations, which are definitely different cultural scenarios than you have in the United States. Both of those situations found that emotional intelligence can, in fact, be used and closely linked to an employee's or a leader's success. In fact, the Indian study in particular found that highly emotional intelligent leaders outperformed their lower emotional intelligence displaying counterparts. So that's definitely a strong supporter of this theory that emotional intelligence and leadership aren't only linked in the American context, but it's actually linked globally. The fact that it's more universal than we might have previously expected is definitely something that contributes to the hypothesis. And then finally, it's important to note that there was one opposing view found in the literature. A couple of experts in one specific study found no correlation, so no relation between a leader's emotional intelligence and their corresponding success. And it's important to realize that this shouldn't completely discount the findings of the multitude of other studies which found a strong link between emotional intelligence and success, but rather it should point to our need for further research. Obviously, the study of emotional intelligence and leadership is still in its infancy. It's only really come about in the past 10 years. And so we still need to be able to study and understand not only what went on in this situation, but also in the general context as well. We need to understand that we need to have, valid and really applicable research parameters. So this really should point us towards additional research. Overall, however, our hypothesis was in fact confirmed, as the vast majority of literature showed strong support for the connection between emotional intelligence and leadership effectiveness and success. So we can see that our hypothesis was confirmed, but it's also important to consider a biblical application of this. So let's go ahead and look at that briefly. And as we mentioned before, there are 5 main elements of emotional intelligence, those being self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And an example of this, where we can see this in the Bible, maybe not exactly the same, but definitely some strong similarities, is in the fruits of the Spirit, explained in Galatians 5:22 and 23, which says, "For the fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law." And while these aren't exactly the same as the aspects of emotional intelligence, we can definitely easily see how an emotionally intelligent leader will display a lot of the fruits of the Spirit. Things like self-control, gentleness, peace, patience, those are all elements that an emotionally intelligent leader is going to exhibit. And an example of where we see not only the fruits of the Spirit, but also emotional intelligence being displayed is in the example of Jesus. We can look at when he was being tried right up before his crucifixion. He showed tremendous self-awareness and self-regulation in that instance. When he was grieving the loss of Lazarus with the family of Lazarus, you can see tremendous empathy. And then even in the example of James and John arguing over which was going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, you can see how Jesus handles that situation with grace and with empathy, and displays tremendous social skills in the way that he handles that situation. So we can see there's definitely a strong biblical background of support for the idea that emotional intelligence and leadership are in fact linked, and that emotionally intelligent leaders are the ones that you want to have in organizations. So as a result, leaders should be trained in emotional intelligence to raise not only their personal IQ and their personal success, but also the success of the organizations and the companies that they're a part of. So my challenge to you is just simply to consider, as you go from this presentation, what are some examples of biblical leaders who displayed one or more attributes of emotional intelligence in the Bible? Jesus is certainly one example, but I know there are plenty of others, and I look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on this in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this presentation, and have a great day.